Hi, so I want to talk about some of the myths and misconceptions where vitamin D is concerned. And I got to tell you, I mean, some of these have been shocking to me. But I look back and I realize that's not too far ago, not too long ago. I was one of these people who had these misconceptions. Even though I'm trained in medicine, I've been practicing medicine for over 30 years now, I think. Anyway, so let's get into it. Number one, vitamin D. Number one myth, vitamin D is not a vitamin. And I don't know who named it a vitamin. I mean, if I really told you what I think about that person, yeah, he or she did a great amount of disservice to the medical community by calling it a vitamin because it's not a vitamin. Is technically the technical name is neurosteroid. So it's a brain hormone. Now, it doesn't mean that it only works in the brain, it works all over the body. As a matter of fact, it controls and regulates at least 2,000 of our 25,000 genes. So it is extremely important for brain function and for cardiovascular function, for immune function, obviously for the bones, and a couple of other things. Extremely important. So number one, it is not a vitamin. The reason why is not just because it's a neurosteroid. Uh, it is not a vitamin. Vitamin D3 is the second reason why vitamin D3 is not a vitamin is that vitamin by definition has to be taken into the body. It cannot be produced by the human being. Now, we know that you can make vitamin D in your skin simply by being out in the sun and receiving rays in the sun. It's kind of like you cook. As your skin cooks, it makes vitamin D. Now, I don't mean that you need to go out and get sunburns, which is very hard for someone like me to do. I think I've only experienced it once in my life. I don't even know what it feels like. But it means that you have to expose your skin to sunlight. And now for the second myth or misconception. And I got to tell you, it's many of these misconceptions I've actually heard from people who attended my lectures. And that's why I really love going out into the public and speaking about these things, because you get the feedback you get is tremendous. Second one is that blacks don't need as much sunlight as white people do because, dark colors, this is the misconception right here. Dark colors, so dark paint and so on. We think that because dark paint or dark clothes absorb heat more, so therefore black people do not need to have us or be out in the sun more. So we're not supposed to be deficient in vitamin D because we're black. So the complete opposite is the truth. It's not about heat, it's about light. And so let me explain. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're out in the sun, your skin has to be exposed to the sun. And black skin, the melanin, because we have more melanin pigments, that melanin tends to act as a sunblock. So it blocks out the vital rays the sun needs, or the skin needs to make vitamin D, specifically ultraviolet B rays. So the ultraviolet B rays strike the skin makes vitamin D from the cholesterol. And cholesterol is another topic entirely. But that's the way it should work. All right. So blacks are the most deficient when it comes to vitamin D, not the least deficient. They were the most deficient. Another myth is that librarians, I heard this from an audience member, librarians are the most deficient in vitamin D because they have pale skin, they're not out in the sunlight, they're buried in their books and so on and so forth. Okay, I think I've explained that to you. The paler skin, let me go into it a little deeper. The paler your skin is, the more easily it is to make vitamin D because, like I said, it's the melanin pigments that blocks out the sun rays. So people with pale skin have the least amount or have less amount of melanin than black people do. So pale skin, people who work in libraries or who are indoors all day, even if they come out for about 30 or 40 minutes and they expose a significant part of their skin, maybe they walk out in their t-shirts and their shorts, they're exposing about 1/3 of their skin to sunlight. They are more likely to get adequate vitamin D or to make adequate vitamin D from the sun than someone who is black and who is out in the sun all day but is dressed up or he's dark skin. All right. Now for number 4, myth or misconception, is that someone can wear light-skinned or light clothes and get enough vitamin and go out in the sun and get enough vitamin D. And I got this from one of the ladies who attended my presentation again. And she's like, oh yeah, I've listened to you speak. Vitamin D is very important. And from now on, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go out in the sun. And I looked at what she was wearing, a beautiful frock, nice summer dress, but the thing covered everything from her neckline down to her wrists and her legs. And I was like, well, that's great, but you're not going to get much vitamin D in wearing this. You need to wear your shorts and a tank top or a t-shirt or something. And she looked at me in horror and she's like, I can't do that. That's indecent. So she's a church-going person, and that's another thing I've noticed between blacks and whites when it comes to dressing. There's some differences in what is considered in perception about what is considered decent and what is considered indecent. So she considered wearing shorts indecent. Most white people who are religious don't feel the same way. But anyway, I tried to convince her that she should find a way to expose her skin to the sunlight, because covering it up, it doesn't matter how light your clothes are, you are not going to get enough. Your skin is not going to make vitamin D if it's covered up. That's the bottom line right there. All right. Now, here's a 5th misconception. And I think this is a problem more with what we've been taught, or what healthcare professionals and their powers that be, the authorities, the recommendations being passed down. And that is this, that you only need 600 international units. If you're going to supplement, you only should take no more than 600 international units a day. And if you are over 70, it's 800 international units a day. And I think that's to be regretted, because it doesn't take into account the wide range of people out there. A lot of things can have to be factored in as to how much vitamin D should be taken. Now, let's start with this. During the summer, you can get a lot of vitamin D by going out in the sun. You may not even need supplements. During the winter, especially if you live above the, I guess it's 37th parallel. Anyway, Northeast. You live in the Northeast, Vermont, for instance, or upstate New York, you are not getting vitamin D, even if you go out in the sun butt naked. Something about the tilt of the sun and the tilt of the tilt of the earth as opposed to the sun, and something about the ultraviolet B rays not penetrating the earth well enough. But bottom line, forget about getting vitamin D during the winter. There's the vitamin D you made during the summer that you are existing and surviving on during the winter. And if you didn't expose enough of your skin, you didn't expose yourself sufficiently during the summer, it's a good chance your reserves will not be adequate for the winter. Anyway, that's one. There are also other factors. Like I mentioned, dark skin, you're being out in the sunlight, whether or not you're being out in sunlight, your weight, if you're overweight or obese, according to my BMI measurement, I'm obese. I don't know how it came about that, but that's what it says. If you're older, your skin is not as efficient as it was when you were 25, obviously, so you're not making the vitamin D as efficiently. And if you're dealing with a chronic disease like diabetes or an autoimmune condition or hypertension or cardiovascular disease, any chronic disease, you are already depleting your vitamin D stores, because your body uses up vitamin D when it's fighting infection or trying to deal with a chronic disease. So, and there's a list of other things too that are involved, but I'm just pointing these out. You cannot make a cookie cutter. You cannot have a cookie cutter approach and just make a blanket recommendation of just one blanket recommendation. Besides that, if you go out in the sun, studies have shown that, especially if a white person goes out in the sun and is sufficiently exposed, they can make as much as 15 to 20,000 international units simply by exposing the skin to the sun over 30 minutes to an hour. Now think about that. If your body makes that much vitamin D, that means it needs that much vitamin D. So why would you cap it at 600 international units? It doesn't make sense. And one of the reasons I believe for that capping is that they're already thinking in terms of vitamin D and bone metabolism. So they think about vitamin D for the bones. They are not thinking about it when it comes to the brain, or when it comes to sleep, or when it comes to hormonal regulation, or cardiovascular disease, or immune function, a whole bunch of all those things that vitamin D is involved in. So I want you to reconsider. Don't just take a set amount. You want to check your vitamin D levels and begin to take vitamin D as a supplement if you can't get out in the sun, and this winter is coming, so you're not even going to get out. Even if you get out in the sun, you're not even going to get enough vitamin D. So start to consider taking vitamin D because you need it. All right. Well, now for the final myth or misconception, and that is that vitamin D is only for bone health. And this is what we're taught in medical school. So I really can't say I blame people, but we need to. I really can't say I blame the medical professional, but we need to progress. There's been so much research when it comes to vitamin D that for the sake of our patients and for the sake of our long-term survival, we need to move with the time, so to speak. So vitamin D, again, is not just about the bone. It's about the brain health. It's about sleep. It's about muscle contraction, right? Even you can't even, a lot of low back pain can be associated with low levels of vitamin D. We've talked about immune function. It was big during COVID-19, the pandemic. We knew that people who had the worst forms of COVID were also those who had the least amount of vitamin D. People who had sufficient amount of vitamin D did not have severe forms. I went through the COVID. I was in Nigeria and I was in the US. I traveled everywhere. I can't point to a time when I actually had COVID. I must have had, because I was exposed to people who had, but I never had the symptoms. Never once did I have a cough or a headache or a sniffle. Even though this was before the vaccines came out. So and that's because I took a lot of vitamin D. All right, so that covers it. These are the myths and misconceptions where vitamin D is concerned. If you want more information, click on the link below. I believe we have a webpage where we have an ebook, slides, a webinar that I did on vitamin D, and hopefully you'll take advantage of it. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.